Chapter 21. I had been doing Go Home for such a long time that everything about it was familiar. The trails through the hills, the search for water, the smell of animals, the lack of food. Days went past, and I headed steadily toward Go Home. Once I startled a rabbit, but they had not gotten any easier to catch. Once I crept down to a road and found some old hot dog pieces in a metal bin that I knocked over. Other than that, I was not doing very well at feeding myself. Dogs are not supposed to feed themselves. That's why there are people. After I gobbled up the hot dogs, I lifted my nose to the breeze. The hair along my back stirred as I caught a new scent. At least 3 of the small bad dogs were nearby. I did not want to meet them, so I headed back into the woods, moving uphill. The odor faded behind me. Then, as I crossed a small stream and drank my fill, I picked up their scent again. It was so strong, I turned and stared down the slope behind me, expecting to see them slink out from behind some rocks or trees. I did not see them, but I could tell they were close. I was being hunted. I headed up along the trail again, because there was nowhere else to go. Soon I saw the glow of unfiltered sunlight ahead. The trail burst from the trees and into a large stretch of grassy meadow. There was nowhere to hide here. The small bad dogs would see me easily. Far ahead, the meadow sloped steeply upward. I could see a jumble of boulders poking through the grass. The wind was behind me, blowing my scent uphill toward those boulders, but nothing leaped out to run me down. There were no bad dogs there waiting for me. I remembered the last time I'd been threatened by the small dogs. A good dog learns when things repeat. Last time, having the rock wall behind me had protected me and frustrated my attackers. If I could reach those large boulders now, I would have a chance. My legs were weak and tired from so many days without good food. Even so, I began running uphill. I could feel the pack of predators behind me. They were closing in. I was panting hard when I reached the rocks, and I lay in a small pool of shade for a time to catch my breath. From here, I could see the entire meadow below me. I spotted the small dogs when they trotted out from the woods. Single file, they advanced through the grass toward me. My lips drew back in a snarl. I was not thinking about Lucas for that moment. I did not feel the pull of Go Home. All I wanted was to face my enemies, to sink my teeth into their flesh. I got to my feet, ready for the fight to begin. My 3 enemies climbed up the hill silently. Their tongues hung out. Their eyes were slits. As they grew near, they spread out, since they knew that I could not retreat. The rocks behind me held me in place. I could smell that they were a family, all young males from the same litter. I could smell that they were hungry. In fact, they were starving. I was bigger than any of them, but they were desperate. They would not give up easily. And if they knew how to hunt as a pack, they would win. I longed to lunge at them, to chase them away, but I stayed with my tail to the boulders. I barked, snapping my teeth, warning them. They drew back, nosing each other. I saw that they were accustomed to prey that fled. Prey that fought back was new to them. One of them, a bit larger than his brothers, darted ahead. I jumped forward to meet him. He danced back, and his 2 brothers moved to the side together, instead of flanking me on each side. They did know how to hunt as a pack. I turned to face them and sensed the largest one leaping at me. I snarled and snapped at him, and the 2 smaller ones charged. I chopped the air with my fangs, knocking over a small dog. The bold one took his turn to spring. I felt teeth on my neck, tearing my flesh. I screamed and twisted and slashed and bit, and we went up on our back legs. I forced him down with my heavier weight, but one of his brothers darted forward. Then there was a blur of motion above me. Something had climbed up on the boulders behind me and jumped, soaring over my head and landing right in front of the small bad dogs. The pack was snarling and yelping in shock and fear. They scrambled back. I stared in amazement as an enormous cat, far larger than I was, sprang at the nearest bad dog, claws slashing. Her massive paw struck the boldest dog on his haunches and sent him tumbling. The scent of the giant feline filled my senses, and I wagged. I knew this cat. It was Big Kitten, and she had grown into a very, very big kitten. And three bad dogs were fleeing down the hill in a panic. Big Kitten lopped easily after them for a moment before she turned to look at me. I wagged. She came to me and purred and rubbed her head under my chin, nearly knocking me over. I play-bowed, and she knew what to do. She put out one enormous paw and swatted at my nose, keeping her sharp claws in. I dodged away and darted back to put my paws on her shoulders, just as I used to do when we played. But I had to jump up to do it, lifting my front feet off the ground. When she turned and headed uphill, I followed. She was my pack. She led me to the carcass of an elk, half buried in shallow dirt. We fed side by side as we had done so many times before. Once my stomach was full, I laid down in a patch of sunny grass. I was tired. Big Kitten came over and licked at the wound in my neck, her rough tongue scrubbing at my skin until I turned away from her with a sigh. She went away in the night, but I stayed where I lay, sleeping curled up in the grass. As the sun was rising, she returned, settling down next to me and purring. I rested with her, resisting the urge to get up, to get moving, to go home. This was part of our pattern, our way of being a pack. We would stay with the elk carcass for a few days and eat as much as possible before we moved on. We would do this until we were with Lucas, and then we would not need to hunt any longer. I wondered if Big Kitten would sleep on the bed with Lucas and me, or across the street with Mother Cat. Big Kitten did not stay close during the day, but she came to find me at night. Sometimes she led me to a meal, usually buried in the dirt. Several times I smelled humans in the forest and went to find the spots where they stayed and where they filled up the metal bins with food. I gobbled down small morsels, but took big things, chunks of bread, pieces of meat, up to share with Big Kitten. We were making progress toward Lucas. I could feel it. And the closer we got to go home, the stronger its pull became. We had been a pack again for some time the day we crossed a wide meadow. Other animals had been here before us and had left large brown piles half hidden in the short, dry grass. I could see and smell that these big piles did not come from dogs. I sniffed them with interest and even licked one, but I could not figure out who had left them behind. In the middle of the field was a strange kind of car or truck. It had 4 wooden wheels that had sunk halfway into the dirt, and a flat wooden frame between them that was half rotted away. I examined it with a little wariness, since things with wheels were often connected with humans, but I could smell that no people had been around this object for a very long time. The sky was beginning to darken ahead, so I crawled underneath the wooden surface, resting in the shady dirt between the wheels. It was a comfortable spot for the night. Big Kitten would find me here after a while, and we would sleep together. I dozed off. In the morning, when I woke, I could not feel Big Kitten's warmth against me. I could not smell her nearby, but I could smell other animals, lots of them. I looked out from under my wooden shelter, and I saw feet, many, many feet. They were very odd feet, too, not like dog feet with our sturdy pads, or like cat feet with their sharp claws that can slide in and out. These feet were hard and round, with a crack down the middle that split them into 2 halves. Cautiously, I wiggled out from my sleeping spot. I could not believe what I saw and smelled. There were animals all around me, huge animals, much taller than I was. They had strange feet I had seen already, and long legs, and huge bodies covered in dense, curly hair, much thicker than the fur of any dog I had ever seen. Their heads were the size of my body and were crowned with curved horns that came to sharp points. Some of these heads bobbed down to the grass and nibbled at it. Other heads turned to look at me curiously. One of the creatures twitched its tail out of the way and let loose an enormous plop down in the grass, and I realized that these were the animals who had left the piles that I had encountered yesterday. I had gotten used to being one of the biggest animals around. I was bigger than most dogs, well, except Dutch. I had once been bigger than Big Kitten, although that was not true anymore. I was bigger than the rabbits and squirrels I chased, bigger than the bad dogs who'd tried to hunt me twice. But these animals made me feel tiny. I could smell that they were not hunters. They did not eat other creatures, just plants, but I did not want to get near them. One of them, smaller than the rest, seemed curious about me. It moved away from the side of a larger one and took several clopping steps in my direction. I took a few steps backward. It stretched out its nose toward me and made a strange grunting bleat. That was all I needed to hear. I turned and leaped away, running through the crowd around me, darting around those huge, hard feet and dodging horned heads that swiveled to stare at me. Soon I was away and could put on more speed as I headed up a hill along the side of the meadow. Behind me, the big creatures returned to their grazing. Dogs did not seem to matter to them. The hill was not steep, but it was long. I panted as I toiled up the slope. I was nearly at the top when I caught a familiar smell and put on a little extra speed. Big Kitten was waiting for me. She had settled down on top of a boulder, basking sleepily in the sun. I suppose she had not come to sleep with me under the thing with the wheels because she had not liked the big animals either. Or maybe because their smell had masked mine and she had not been able to find me. I touched noses with her and she rubbed her face on mine. I jumped up on the boulder beside her. Now I could see the herd of big creatures on one side of the hill below us. Down the other side of the hill was a town, a huge town. The smell lifted up toward my nose and I realized where we were. We had found Go Home.